What was your "this person is on another level of stupid" moment? I was once asked how it felt to come to the US as a refugee. I'm from Germany. She then looked rather surprised when I told her that Hitler has been dead for 75 years and that Germany is one of the more liberal countries in the world these days. She full on thought I fled Nazi Germany. Not me, but a friend worked in a call center for a CC company in the disputes department. The number one item people called to say they never purchased, *interest charge. I was friends with a guy who believed those fake Apple adverts like Apple Wave, microwave your phone for instant battery charge. I was so dumbfounded that he actually fell for it when I saw him the week after and he had a new phone. It all clicked for me. I worked at a pet store in college. This customer asked me which food would make his pit bull swole. I suggested a high protein food with a good amount of exercise, but advised that a lot of it was determined by the dog's genetics. He asked me if we sold genetics. Ex-flatmate cancelled the gas and electricity contract because it was too expensive. Wondered why we had no more electricity nor gas. She thought we paid €90 a month to get a hotline 24/7 in case of problem. We were talking about the Irish potato famine in college, and this one girl said, "Oh wow, I thought it was the potato family." As if that wasn't enough, she later asked why were they so eager to get jobs? If I was that hungry I wouldn't even try to get a job. Man, I wish I was joking. Knew a girl in middle school that didn't understand the concept of perspective. She also thought north was whichever direction you were facing at the time. I work for Parks Canada in Yoho National Park. I have been asked the question, seriously, where do you keep the animals at night? Twice in my career. To this day I still find great joy imagining what they thought was going on each night as we collected every large animal in the parks. How much is a $50 worth? She was the newest teller my boss hired. Will never forget that moment. I had to explain to a girl why you couldn't grow your hair down in front of your face and just cut out eye holes. Even explaining it her, she couldn't grasp it and brushed me off as being too smart. I got a concussion a while back. A friend of mine told me not to come close because it might be contagious. They weren't kidding. Someone in my history class argued that Mussolini was a type of pasta. Had someone ask me, is Europe on Earth? Me, when I was a kid, I had a real old transistor radio. Asked my parents for a newer radio so I could receive and listen to newer music. I had to explain to a woman that apples did not contain any gluten, meat, or dairy ingredients. How can one think apples contain dairy? She thought gluten was found in every major grain and that apples were a grain because they have seeds. I had a coworker who could never figure out what time her 15-minute break was over. We were both bank tellers. In high school I met a boy who asked me for a hygienic cloth because he thought he had a period. Actually he only sat on a melted popsicle. When a dumb as a brick girl that I went to high school with asked our history teacher if she'd ever owned a slave. Dated a guy we watched Titanic. He thought the movie was stupid because the boat sank. It wasn't believable. You can't recover from that. Ever. The time a friend told me how much he hates potatoes while eating french fries, and I literally blew his mind by telling him french fries are potatoes. Pluto isn't a planet anymore, it's a star. My sister asked if the Eiffel Tower was in Paris or France and couldn't understand how it could be in both. The time I watched someone who had missed their exit on the highway stop on the shoulder, back up, turn around, and go up the entrance ramp. I could not believe it. When I was in high school, there were these two girls that constantly just blew my mind. One of them asked, what does insignificance mean? And the other replied, why something is significant. The first girl looked at her and went, okay, I get it. Classmate was convinced that winning the lottery is 50% chance because you either win it / not. In last year of high school. I work retail. Had a customer a few weeks back pull her mask down to cough into the open air and then pull it back up. Really makes you wonder why there are people like this in the world. Had an old boss who was computer illiterate. We said we needed a new drive on the server to hold new files, and he said you can just download some memory. When I was younger I was mad that everyone else had an accent and I didn't. 3 years later I realized that I did in fact have an accent and that I was on another level of stupid. I asked a girl when the last time was that she changed her oil. She said, "Oil, you mean gas." I once forgot to bring my laptop to school, so my mum had to bring it in. My maths teacher was notified and she sent me a message telling me to pick up my laptop at the front office, but the only way I could see the messages if I had my laptop with me. Watching a man try to open the locked front door of my shop while a bright red closed sign was literally inches from his face. He kept looking at the door like it was just stuck. We asked our classmate to prove she knew the 7 continents. Her list went like this: North America, Europe, China, the Pacific Ocean. I am not. My friend was taking a selfie. The camera was smudged, so we told him he should clean it. He then turns his phone over and began to clean the camera on the back, then turned it back over and tried to take a selfie again with the other camera. My teacher telling me that a private company is just a combination of the words private and company without really explaining the meaning of it, then telling me that I ask stupid questions. A group of late teens sitting outside my building assuring each other that all criminal charges would be dropped when they reached 21. DUIs, drug charges, traffic violations, everything. I walked away shaking my head because they were in for a reality check. A few years ago my roommate was accepted to NIU and texted me a picture of the letter and said finally get to see a different country. We live in America. When I found out one of my friends from high school thought it was Robert E. Lee, not Robert E. Lee. Edit, one of my friends. Not all of them, Mayo. Yesterday my mom said it's kinda weird how the 4th of July has fell on the same day of the year the past couple years. I was dying and she was so confused. A coworker started to think that he was going to be fired, but instead of trying to improve his performance or at least waiting to be fired so he could collect unemployment, he just walked off the job during his lunch break and left his badge/work phone on his desk. I can't use this, I'm left-handed. It was a shovel, and I was the idiot that thought a left-handed shovel existed. I had an ex ask me if the moon was north. Me when I asked my dad if he was serious that pickles were made of cucumber. My mind was blown. When I read yesterday that people think ocean water and sand are giving them coronavirus rather than realizing it's because they are spending time on a crowded beach with strangers. SMH. My friend's girlfriend regularly says some stupid "we're all in our 30s" and she recently told me she can't read the clock with hands. Person 1, I can't find my keys. Person 2, should I call you? Someone told me that minorities were never oppressed, then linked an article from The Onion as their source. They were serious. A girl in my neighborhood denied spying on me, and my friends then proceeded to list all the weird we had done over the past few days. My assistant tried to grow potatoes, so she planted a potato. Great. She was shocked that they were root vegetables and she'd have to dig up her plant to get the potatoes out of the soil. High school health class/sex edition. The teacher mentioned saran wrap can be used as a makeshift barrier for oral sex. A girl asked if tinfoil would work too. One of the dumbest things I have ever heard anyone say is the spork is the devil's utensil because it is the amalgamation of the masculine fork and the feminine spoon and is trying to blur gender lines in society. I once met a guy who was not an organ donor. When I asked him why, he said that if science can ever bring someone back from the dead, he would need all of his organs. Anyone who wears a mask but doesn't pull it up over their nose. We were cleaning out our lockers in the last weeks of school, and I was gonna recycle a piece of paper, and I was ferociously stopped by a Karen who exclaimed, "You can't recycle paper if it has writing on it." A customer at a fabric store came in to return a 7/8 yard cut piece of fabric because she said I charged her almost as much as a full yard would have cost. We had family members tell the husband's parents they weren't welcome to visit anytime soon because the grandparents had been babysitting their other son's child who had an asthma attack and needed a couple of days off school. Who knew asthma was contagious? OMG, I can't believe you hunt and kill animals for meat. OMG, you have chickens and take their eggs too. You're awful. Why can't you get your eggs and meat like everyone else from the supermarket where they don't have to kill animals for it? I don't. Okay. Me calling my dad's phone to tell him that he forgot his phone home. I bursted out in laughter until I cried. Wow, I can be so FCKN stupid sometimes. Well, most of the time, but you get the point. Swear on my life I told my abusive ex, well, to be frank with you, and we got in a long argument. He was crying and going crazy, asking me who thie's Frank. He ended up hanging up, and I got a bunch of calls from one of his friends asking me who Frank was. I moved to the UK from Germany. A guy asked me if we had colors in Germany. The woman who told the Native American protesters at Mount Rushmore to go back to their country. My sister thought Princess Diana was a whale conservationist. Blowing up a balloon with his mouth and thinking it should float. Dude, it's not helium. A former friend of mine's decided to do a U-turn right in front of the freeway entrance. This same friend also thought there was an avalanche when our ice maker went off. My boss from the last job, he has a metric ton of epic dumbassery, but the one I remember the most is that he thinks tsunami is pronounced tsunami. I'm dead serious. There was this 12-year-old kid in school that thought the best was to deal with the number of positive COVID-19 cases was to stop testing, so that they'd be less positive cases. Edit. I honestly didn't think I needed to put r/s, but hey, it is the internet. This girl was skeptical about evolution. How could the earth have evolved from a single cell? No one will ever see this, but a couple of my peers at work were legitimately discussing the difference between left twigs and right twigs. I knew right then and there that I had accomplished nothing in life and needed to find a new job. An idiot asked my British friend why, if she's British, why does her accent sound like it's from London, and how does she know English so well if she's British? Still SMH. A Redditor told me that sexual harassment can only take place in a workplace environment between a manager/owner and an employee. I once had two people come up to me arguing about whether spiders exist. Is Greece a country? Asked during a game of categories by a university student. Fun fact, the girl who asked that question went on to marry a very prominent American footballer and is now worth tens of millions of dollars. She was sweet, so I'm happy for her. This was a one-off, because she's actually really smart, but after watching the Martian my wife turned to me and asked, do you think that was based on a true story? People who wear face masks like a chin guard. I was a co-hostess with a girl in a restaurant, watching ads on a hanging TV for a new movie. At the end, it said coming soon to a theater near you. To which she turned to me with wide eyes and genuinely asked, how do they know where I live? A passenger was unable to understand that different countries have different cut-off times for flights, and that he has missed his flight, had to explain to a 30-something screaming man that Canada and USA are two different countries and that North America is a continent, not a country. My husband told me on a flight to court that he was open to the possibility that the world is flat. On the flight back home from court, he then changed his tune. Yep, the world is flat. My window seat proved it. Can't see the curvature of the earth. On Twitter, I saw a Korean woman commenting on white supremacy, and a white woman responded by calling her something along the lines of a coward for hiding behind symbols instead of showing her real name. My friend got on the top of a basketball hoop, jumped off yelling Mexico, and broke his nose while shitting himself. Someone I knew thought there was literally a different moon for each continent, and that Neil Armstrong landed on the American moon.